2 years ago, I was struggling to break past 20,000 followers on LinkedIn. I was frustrated, I was close to giving up, and time again, I couldn't work it out. Today, I have over 1 million followers, creating millions a year across a portfolio of businesses, and a strategy that really can be repeated by anyone willing to put in the work. So, how did I do it? First, this did not happen quickly. I think it's been a culmination of over a decade of hard work and building businesses, 2.5 years of building my personal brand. However, if I was to start again, this is what I do. Let me walk you through my exact framework that I use to go from struggling to get traffic through to being the most viewed creator on LinkedIn, sometimes above Barack Obama and Bill Gates. And before I tell you the topics I'm covering, I don't think I am the most influential person on LinkedIn. However, I do think it is interesting that a relatively ordinary business person can get themselves into a position where they have an extraordinary amount of views and attention on their business. And that is the thing as an entrepreneur I'm fascinated by, is why more entrepreneurs aren't building in public, because you get so much attention and attraction towards your business. In this video, we will be going through 5 separate topics. The first is how to set up your LinkedIn page as a landing page. So how do you set up the page? How does it convert? Number 2, we're going to be talking about the 5 proven LinkedIn posts that will help you grow followers and get clients. Number 3, I'm going to focus on what pre-validated content actually is and how you can use it so you never have a day where you don't know what to post. Number 4, we're going to talk through how to actually sell on LinkedIn. I'm going to be working you through the different methodologies to actually sell to customers, how to segment customers, and how to keep customers for years to come. And number 5, which really is a bonus section, and if you subscribe to the channel and sign up to the newsletter, I will send you this sheet. It is the 2025 algorithm report, which we released only a few days ago, that shows you the exact hacks, the exact formats, and the exact tricks that you need to get your content to perform and how to grow a following. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's get into it. So as you can see on this sheet, for my profile picture, I used a high quality headshot that I took that was approachable, it was credible. For the banner, I chose bold and simple visuals that reflect my brand's value, and it linked to my newsletter, which is something I'll talk a lot about later, but the newsletter became the most important thing for the business. So after this, you've got your headline and your about section, and your headline is so important as it appears under every single post and every single comment that you do. So no matter what you're posting, you're commenting, this is what people are going to see. So unlike loads of like LinkedIn gurus, I don't think that one size fits all for this. It has to completely depend on your goals. However, to help you, I'm going to put onto the screen now my own formula for how I think that business owners and founders and entrepreneurs should think about the structure of their headline. So I've put together this card for everyone to use, which will help you put together your headline. So it will be, I am a job title. So I am a founder or an entrepreneur or a practitioner. That helps. And then the target ICP, it might be, I help brands or businesses, or if you're more niche, it might be accountancies or law firms, whatever it is. So I am a marketeer that helps brands, that could be it so far, achieve a desired result by said action. So if I was to string that all together, for example, when I first built my first business, which was an agency, it was, I am a marketeer that helps luxury brands to attract high net worth individuals. And so that was my headline when I was getting started in my career. And the simplicity of that is that if my target audience was to see one of my posts or see one of my comments elsewhere, they would immediately identify me as the type of person that could help them and their business. If your goal is to simply grow your account and build attention, you want to include your position and the topics you talk about within your content. For example, founder of the Creator Accelerator. I post about entrepreneurship, personal branding, and leadership. If the goals is to land specific clients or to drive people towards your business, you need to be very specific with who you are, as we just discussed. So if you take the example from me, one of my products is the Creator Accelerator. I help 6, 7, and 8-figure entrepreneurs build their personal brand through actionable strategies. So you can play around with this to suit you and to suit your business, but it's very important to be focused on your goal and the right followers. So your about section should now take that further. It should be sharing a really relatable story about the struggles that you've faced, the lessons that you've learned, how you've helped others to achieve their goals, which is similar to your ideal customer. It should have a clear destination for people to go to. So if you're a coaching business, you should have a link to your coaching. If you're an agency, a link to your agency. If you have a SaaS product, a link to your SaaS product. If you were to look at my about section now, because I have a portfolio of businesses, my about section will focus on my journey as an entrepreneur. It will go through the different businesses that I've built in my life and the different age stages that I've had in my life. And I feel like that gives depth and awareness to the audience that I'm not a one-time founder. I'm not like a LinkedIn coach. I am an entrepreneur that helps entrepreneurs to scale their businesses. And so it's good to show people that type of variety of business experience, because that is what founders ultimately need. So in your case, your headline, super specific, it answers the ICP, but the about section can get deeper into a little bit about you, your background, and how you've become who you are. The other really important things to call out on the profile is your featured section and your job section. And so from a featured section perspective, you can have 2 or 3 or even more. I would suggest having 2 effectively call to actions for your products. As I always tell founders and businesses, the most important thing to understand about social media in general is that the platforms limit your reach. And that limiting of the reach depends on the platform and depends on the time. So when I was 21 years old, we could build Facebook pages up to 1 million followers in a couple of weeks. And yet nowadays, if you were to try and do that, it's near impossible. And so when I first started using LinkedIn, it was much easier to grow. And so the point is, I am always trying to get my followers to come off the social media platforms and subscribe to my newsletter. And we call this deplatforming. And so no matter what, you will always see, whether it's on my Instagram, on my LinkedIn, on my YouTube, whatever, I'm always trying to push people to my newsletter so that I actually own the relationship with my follower and with my community, rather than if you have 1,000 followers, you're likely that LinkedIn will only show your post to 100 people or 200 people. And so you're going to struggle to access even your own followers. It's the same thing on Instagram. And so when it comes to your featured section, I would always recommend that people have some form of newsletter or long form content that someone can go and subscribe to. And then the other part of the featured section, personally, I would always suggest that should be a inquiry form, a waitlist form, a subscription form, a buying form. That is an actionable step that someone will take. So for example, on my profile, at any time, these links will change depending on what business I'm actually pushing at the time. And so right now you will see that on the left-hand side, this is pushing my newsletter. And so people can sign up to my newsletter. And over the last year, I've built a newsletter of 250,000 subscribers who I can email every Sunday now, and no algorithm can get in the way of that. So think how powerful that really is. And then the other one will be pushing people to my Creator Academy products. So whether you join the community or you join a live in-person coaching by me, or whether you join live in-person coaching in a group format online in the cohorts, I will be pushing that on this tile always. The other thing to bear in mind is your job section, where you can effectively have listed as your job, and then underneath you can create, as I have here, a media piece. And you can check out on my profile how I've done it. You can add your job, your title, and then underneath you can click a media element, so the audience can click that media element and they go straight through to the landing page as well. So what I would always say, and Hormozi talks about this quite a lot in his content, is that I make content every single day, which I'm going to get into in a minute. But the key is that once someone likes my content and they come to my profile, I want them to be able, within a few clicks, to understand what I do, what I offer, how to sign up for more content from me, and how to check out my businesses. So before we actually go on to the content creation, what content works to grow your brand, first it's very important to understand who you are making content for. And so who is your ICP? I created this sheet, which is the anatomy of the perfect LinkedIn post. And I talk about on this sheet the 5 proven LinkedIn posts that will grow your audience. And these aren't specific just to LinkedIn. This is how content works. However, I've kept it in the context of LinkedIn just so people can get started really practically. So firstly, who is your ICP? Let's think about someone who runs an accountancy business. So as an accountant, you want to attract to you business owners and business leaders who are interested in learning about accountancy and learning about how to manage their business better from a financial perspective. And so if I'm an accountant, I am making content about how entrepreneurs and businesses can utilize new taxes, how entrepreneurs and businesses can reduce their tax liability, how entrepreneurs and businesses can help their staff to be paid more through better taxes. I'm trying to create content that is financially aligned for my business and is going to attract me the right customers. And so if you think about my example that I gave earlier, I am trying to create content for entrepreneurs looking to grow, because my services broadly are I invest in businesses, I mentor founders, and I teach people about how to scale their profile and scale their business. So I want to get entrepreneurs into my funnel and be interested in my business, because I want to be able to talk to them about my services later down the funnel. And the great thing is, at the top of the funnel, you're just giving away free and incredible value the whole time. So the number one thing that people always say to me when I talk to them about the power of LinkedIn is actually, what do I post about? Like, I don't know what to post. How could I possibly post every single day? And so I think with all things, you have to create a system. And so what we always try and teach people is that over 1 or 2 pages, we call it the 3-page personal brand document, and I can just flash that up now. We call it the 3-page personal brand doc because on those 3 pages, I want it to be so abundantly clear who the ICP is, who the person you're making content is for, and what content you're going to make for them. And so for me, I would say there's never a day that I don't know what I'm posting, because I'm always posting for entrepreneurs who are interested in growth and scale. I'm always posting about topics those entrepreneurs are interested in. And so I might post about startups, businesses, scale, building your profile. I might post about delegation, automation. I might post about AI, all the things that entrepreneurs who are interested in growth will be interested about reading about. They might want to talk about leadership and culture and mentorship and growth, having a growth mindset. All these topics fit perfectly within the realm of talking to entrepreneurs. And so if I write down the sheet, who I'm targeting, what I talk about, very quickly, I can put together titles for lots of different posts that I'm interested in. So here are 5 posts that are proven to grow your brand and grow your brand at speed. And I just want to say, I feel like there is a trend where people talk about growing slowly is more authentic. I personally don't understand that in the context of trying to grow a business. I am trying to grow a business, and I want to grow that business as fast as possible, as sustainably as possible, and as authentically as possible. But I don't want to have to sacrifice speed. And so one of the things that I think people have been very good at over the years is taking incredibly pre-validated ideas that we know everyone loves, and aligning them with their brands. So if you think about what an author is, they are an ordinary person who goes deep on an idea and makes that idea a massive part of their personal brand. And so, for example, if I was to write a book about delegation and I was to go very deep on talking about delegation every single day, I would attract a lot of entrepreneurs to my brand, and I would talk about delegation every single day. So if you're sat there thinking to yourself, what do I post about? How do I post about these things? I would say pick the topics you love, pick the things that align with you and your audience, and start making content about them. And so I talk about this here, which is the awareness post. So the awareness post needs to be lightweight. It needs to be easy to read, easy to like, easy to reshare, easy to empathize with, and easy to relate to. And for you, that means that you need to be able to capture the essence of big topics in small quotable formats, whether that's you quoting someone else or whether that's you making a statement. However that post comes out, it needs to be short, snappy, relatable, and it needs to be easily shareable. And so those posts will get easy lift on your account, whether that's Instagram, LinkedIn, anything. Those posts will get traction because the ideas behind them are pre-validated. And so pre-validated ideas is simply the idea that if we think about habits for a second, you watching this are well within your rights to talk about habits and stacking habits and so forth. And so there are incredible ways to approach that, which might be firstly looking at Atomic Habits from James Clear and looking at some of his most pre-validated quotes, looking at The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg, which is a book that predated Atomic Habits. And that's how you can start to put together some quotes on habits, but also think about what are the quotes that you want to create on habits that really align with your personal brand and what you stand for. The second post is what I would call the personal post. So you want people to be able to buy into you. I think the problem with personal brand, and I think the problem with content in many ways, it's become impersonal. It's become too formulaic. And so you want to be pushing out personal stories. You want to be creating stories and moments that your audience can connect with you on a personal and deeper level. And so, for example, I will often tell stories about my challenges as an entrepreneur, my challenges with my family, my challenges in life in general. And I think that builds depth with the audience. And I also love being honest and transparent about those stories. And so try not to look like your page is just like a meme page or an information page. You are a person and you have to have a personal brand. So don't forget to write personal stories and create personal content, which is photos and a look behind the curtain of your life. And that is the most important thing. The third post is probably the most important and probably the most forgotten about post in the whole quantum of personal brand, which is the education post. The education post is, in my opinion, the most forgotten and overlooked post there is, which is effectively content about the pillars we were talking about earlier. So things I talk about: delegation, automation, business scaling, etc. How do I help entrepreneurs with those things? And so from an educational standpoint, I want to help someone go from A to B in scaling their company from 1 million to 5 million. And so what are the steps that I might put towards, helping that person do it? Create that as a piece of content. In my life, I've raised 35 million in venture capital funding before. And so I made a infographic, a carousel, about how to raise VC funding. And that piece of content got me hundreds of people reaching out to me to say, one, thank you for the content, but two, this has really helped me with raising money. And so the post we were talking about before, the awareness post, in my opinion, is about brand building. It's about aligning ideas with your brand. It's also about getting a lot of impressions and likes and so forth on your content, and quickly. And so what happens, as happens with any social media platform, by the way, and I'm going to give you the example of Instagram for a second. If you're on Instagram and you hover over someone's post for a couple of seconds, what happens is Instagram then, 4 or 5 videos on, will show you that person's profile again. It happens the same on TikTok. It happens the same on all platforms. And so I like someone's post. Even if I don't like it, I just watch it. They will serve me that person's content again. And so my theory has always been that by having these awareness posts, it garners an audience, it garners people who are going to be served our content, and then maybe they're served different parts of our content later on. And so broadly, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about the content funnel without talking about it. We're talking about the top of the funnel being lightweight, ideas that resonate with our audience, that are aligned with our brands. The middle of the funnel starts becoming educational. It's how you go from A to B on these topics. It's how you scale your company, how you raise funding, how you build profile, all these different topics, like how you do business strategy was one of my most successful sheets ever, because hundreds of founders reached out and said, thank you so much for showing us these strategic models that we can use in our companies. And so don't forget that people will follow you and follow you intently if and only if you are able to educate them and support them on their journey. The fourth post is actually the how we do it post. It is my intellectual property, or in this case, it could be your intellectual property. It is about how my business specifically solves my ICP's problem. And so when I was 21 through 30 and I ran Verb Brands, our content that we produced was about how Verb helped luxury brands connect with high net worth individuals. And so the content we created was things like the State of Luxury report or Luxury IQ. And it was literally how to help brands target and connect with and build demand amongst the high net worth individuals. And we built that company over 10 years and sold it. But one of the things we were best at was getting big brands into our marketing funnel and coming to our events. And they often said that the reason they did is because we had a very distinct way of talking about how we captured attention. And that was effectively the framework and the intellectual property that sat behind Verb Brands. It was our ethos, it was our thinking, it was our framework. And so other agencies didn't have that. And so we immediately distinguished ourselves, and immediately in a crowded market, we're able to differentiate ourselves, which is super important. And so these posts are about your specific IP. So key is create IP specific to your business. And you can see here, this framework, the Play framework, is a framework that's in my book. It's about how to build profile. And so this is not something I've ever seen anywhere else. This is a specific framework that belongs to me. I created this framework. And so that is specifically how we do things. And that again is, if you think about the funnel, again, that's deeper down the funnel. I've educated them, or I've brought them in, I've educated them. I'm now educating them with my specific differentiated view on how to do marketing. The fifth post and the final post is something that people do a lot of, but doesn't work for them. And so this is like what I would call the conversion post. It's about taking the interested parties through and pushing them to actually make a sale, pushing them to actually make an inquiry. People post this every single day. They post conversion posts every single day. Like sign up, become my customer, please, click here, etc. Whereas in my opinion, you have to garner the attention, guide people through discovering you, be educated on your content, and come through to specifically how my business solves your problem. And then that person who's been through your funnel and understands your business, knows how you do things, they see a post that you release, which is a testimonial, a case study, or it might just be an example of the work that you've done. So just using the same example we were talking about earlier, my agency, which targeted luxury brands to help them target high net worth individuals, we would post case studies of how we grew Bugatti's Instagram from 500,000 followers to 3 million followers and the impact that had actually had on sales. And so people were finding Bugatti on Instagram and were then signing up to the waitlist to buy a Bugatti and be vetted, because you have to be vetted to buy a Bugatti. And so we did this for, Rolls-Royce, Aston Martin, Sunseeker Yachts, but they were coming into us through posts that were effectively case studies. However, they didn't just happen across our profiles. They would have been through the State of Luxury report. They would have looked at our luxury IQ data. They would have learned about how our business worked, and they would have followed us for a while, and myself and my business partner for a while. And then at the moment that they needed support, at the moment they needed help, they knew there was someone in the luxury world that they could talk to who understood this. And so these posts, the conversion posts, are about pushing existing desire, as in people who are in your funnel, and turning that desire into demand and then into a customer. The most important thing to convert traffic into an inquiry or into a revenue is to make sure that the case study is real. Make sure that the audience member can click on the case study, can review the case study, can understand the transformation, and can go and research it themselves. I have been building businesses for 15 years, and my biggest pet peeve across all of my businesses, for example, when I ran Lottie, which is a big health tech business, we were often working with agencies, and they would send us their case studies. They'd be like, oh yeah, we've worked with like Nike. And I'd be like, what did you do for Nike? And they're like, oh, it's an NDA. And I'm like, well, that's not a useful case study for me. Just putting the logo doesn't help me. And then I would also work with coaches and consultants who would say, I helped so-and-so entrepreneur, call them Joe Blogs, go from 1 million to 10 million revenue. And so the most powerful case study you can do is a bit more like this. You can say, I helped Dr. Caroline Frost go from 20,000 followers and no business to 200,000 followers and a sold out business in the space of 6 months. Go and check out her profile. And if you want, go and reach out to her. Now, what I've committed to in my businesses these days is only doing those types of case studies, because I am not here and I'm not about fake case studies. I want to produce an incredible case study, which means that I have to produce a product that fundamentally works. And so I would say to all the entrepreneurs out there that are thinking about launching a product, the most important thing in the world is that your product fundamentally delivers, because your product will be marketed by your customers. And the better your customers do, the more case studies you'll get and the more word of mouth you will get. So before I tell you how to sell on LinkedIn, which is also how you sell online and how you sell through Instagram and social in general, before I get to that, I wanted to talk about what pre-validated content actually is. And so if you're sitting there and you think to yourself, I don't know what to post about, and then you come up with some topics that you want to post about. So you've made the move from not knowing to knowing. Now, how do you make that content? I would say that this is the most important thing that really good content creators very rarely ever speak about, which is the best books in the world that came out over the last 10 years closely, not exactly, but closely follow, 10 or 20 books that came out 10 years before them. And so why is that? It's because certain topics and certain ways of talking about certain topics resonate very deeply with people. And so when I think about creating content, I don't think about creating content completely from scratch. I don't think about creating content completely new. I actually did English at school, and one of the things you learn is that there's only 7 storylines at all. And so trying to create completely new things, in my opinion, is just too much work and most of the time impossible. And so what I do, if I ever think to myself, I want to create an amazing resource to help entrepreneurs understand delegation, I want to look at almost every single super successful piece of content ever on delegation. I want to look at YouTube videos, LinkedIn posts. I want to look at books that have sold incredibly well. And I want to understand what it was about that content that made the topic of delegation, which is and can be quite boring, super useful. And then I want to look at how we can make content that is very actionable. And so I am pre-validating the fact that delegation as a topic is going to do well. And so if I was in your position and you now have your topics that you know you want to talk about that are going to connect with your ICP, think about where you can find incredible content that has already been out there on the internet. Maybe it's creators you like, businesses, books, whatever, and study what's come before you, because that is how you're going to get a bit of a jump on how to create the most incredible content. This is the part of the video where things are going to get a little bit more complicated and a little bit more advanced, but this is the stuff. It is these techniques and these tools and this methodology that will allow you to generate hundreds of thousands, if not millions a year from understanding digital marketing and then understanding how to convert traffic into actual revenue. And so companies talk about this all the time, but I feel like what is very important for an entrepreneur to understand is that there is a relationship between your personal profile and the traffic that you then drive into your business. And that traffic is what we're going to talk about now. I like to start here with the anagram, which is serve. So the most important thing to remember at this stage is my phrase, don't sell, serve. And so what does serve stand for? Which is show up consistently, educate, relate to their needs, value over transactions, and engage with authenticity. So you're not selling to them, you are serving them. And so to what we've talked about a lot in the video, it's about educating your audience and taking them from a place where you now have left them in a better position than when you found them. So I don't want you making content about nothing. I want you to be making content about topics that your audience actually care about and topics you can actually help people on, right? That is step one to actually learning how to sell. Step two is about social selling, which is traditionally what we did before social media in selling to other businesses. We would build relationships with people. We would become close with people so that when they needed our service, we were there. And so when thinking about that in a social media context, and specifically with a LinkedIn context, you can filter your profile, whether that's just with the LinkedIn filters, or you can use Sales Navigator to filter your profile again. So you only see the content that's coming through from your ICP. So to go back to my example of the business I owned in my 20s, we had an agency that was aimed at luxury brands to help them connect with high net worth individuals, right? And so who was our ICP? It was luxury brand marketeers. And so I would have my LinkedIn filtered to only have the content from luxury brand marketeers. And I would spend hours going through, commenting on people's profiles, trying to add real value, be like, did you check out this thing? This video might help you. Have you seen this blog post? Did you see this event? I'm speaking at this thing. Would you like to come? And so I spent a lot of time effectively curating relationships and building connections the old-fashioned way, which was adding value to existing conversations on the platform. And so to any entrepreneur out there, that is the single fastest way of getting your ICP to buy into you. Content is one thing, it's top of funnel, but actually connecting with people is at a much deeper point of view. And so it all works in a sort of flywheel, right? I can connect with someone cold and their likelihood of following me will depend on the connection, but also depend on my content. And so you need both. And so in this situation, I would reach out to brands and say, hey, have you ever considered the idea that your brand could enact this marketing strategy? Or have you ever considered that I saw this other brand do this marketing strategy and I think that might work really, really well for you? No obligation whatsoever. Love your brand, love the marketing you're doing. I used to reach out to marketing directors and say, since you joined that brand, I love X, Y, and Z about what the brand has done. And so I'm just building rapport and building the opportunity to have a conversation with them. And so people forget this step. They just make content over here. They forget about social selling. And so if you're selling something of high value, and our agency back in the day used to sell really expensive services, $100,000 a month type services to brands, sometimes more. And so you needed a really strong relationship with the marketing director before they even considered you. And so people buy those types of services in person. And so we had to get all those people to come to events. So the first step is obviously content. The second step is social selling. The third step is deplatforming them and getting them to an email list or to an email and then to an event and selling at the event. The third point here is about making sure that your offer is super clear. And so I'll tell you very quickly a story about how my agency went from making $1 million a year to 10 million a year. And that came in the fact that at the beginning, we were called Adjust Media, and we served every brand that would be interested in working with us. So we did all types of marketing for all brands. We then released a landing page, and that landing page was Verb Brands that helps luxury brands connect with high net worth individuals. So it cut off 90% of the market. We could no longer work with 90% of brands because they weren't luxury. However, to the brands that mattered, our ICP, they saw that positioning and were like, wow, that's the agency for me. And so I would say to everyone, positioning is absolutely critical. And you can change your positioning over time. And so at the very beginning, we were luxury hospitality and fashion brands. And then we became luxury brands. And then we became later on luxury and premium brands, which gave us scope. And it allowed us, when we were a much bigger company, to acquire customers who are high street retailers who weren't specifically luxury, but were premium and wanted to play in that luxury space. And so your branding and positioning can change over time, but make sure that you have a very, very clear positioning at all points in time. And if you then change it later on, make sure it's clear again who the target audience is and who you're helping. So number 4 is about education content, which we spoke about earlier. It's about creating lead magnet worthy content. And by that, I mean, someone sees a piece of content. It's so good that they want to download it and have it themselves, or they want to download that and get part 2, or they want to download that and get access to something else. So the example I'm going to give you is based on my second business, which was Lottie with my brother, which is a company aimed at helping elderly people find care. And so our customer was the people who owned care homes. It was the people who owned these big care facilities. They were our customer. And so we wanted them to find out who we were. We wanted those people to subscribe to our newsletter so we could invite them to events and tell them about our platform, tell them about our software and our solutions. And so what we used to do, very much based on the playbook I had established in my 20s before I sold Verb, with Lottie, we now released The State of Care. And this report was about the care industry. It was about changing trends and how people were going from making phone calls and booking care to now booking online. And so these brands had to be super digitally savvy if they wanted to capture the incoming demand of the children of the elderly people, because they were much more digitally savvy. And so these reports started to be released quarterly, 6 monthly. We produced Care IQ, which was our own data set from our own platform about how people in the care industry were actually acting. And so relate this back to your business. Think about what is the content you can create that is going to be so good that your target audience want to download it and subscribe to your newsletter. So if you think at my agency, the newsletter was called The Luxury Lens. At my health tech company, it was called Care IQ. And for our media and education business, the newsletter is called Step by Step. So in all those examples, you can see how those newsletters appeal to the target audiences. And so Step by Step creates content about entrepreneurs. We deplatform them into the newsletter, and they learn step by step how to build businesses, scale personal brand, etc. All the things that we talk about. And that is where they do it. So ladies and gents, we're going to get more detailed, more advanced now. So you're going to need a pen and paper if you're going to want to do this properly. So the next step, right? If someone likes our lead magnets or our education online, they will go onto a page, and I can flash that up here, and they will hit download on that page. They'll download that resource. And in doing so, they will subscribe to my newsletter. Immediately after they subscribe to my newsletter though, they're subscribed. And that's how most people leave it. That is not correct. The next thing you want to do is actually ask that person some questions about who they are. And so the first question you get on my newsletter after you subscribe is, how can I help you? ? How can I help you? Growing your business or growing your audience? And so someone pre-selects the fact that what they're looking for in terms of guidance. And so the amazing thing is, I can ask that question and then ask another question, which might be, do you own a business? And then once they answer that, I'll say, how many staff do you have in that business? What revenue do you have in your business? And by asking all these questions in a really detailed manner, by the time that someone finishes the questionnaire, I might know that I have 4 or 5 different segments of my audience. I might have the entry-level entrepreneurs who need free content. They can't pay for anything. They don't want training. They want free content on the internet. I love those people. That was me. I then have the people who might have the 6-figure businesses, who might want some online community, accountability from different people. They might want educational type content. They might want YouTubes. They might want longer form, more in-depth education stuff. And then I've got 7, 8-figure entrepreneurs who want in-person training. They want cohort-based group training for connection to other 8-figure owners so they can have accountability. They can talk about big problems. And then you might go all the way through to, as I do, some of the people that I coach are people who have £100 million businesses and even a few businesses worth billions. And those people want to have very intimate relationships with other people in the same position. And so what I'm able to do once I have all that information is curate content and offers and products and businesses based on that. Because if I was to send a $10,000 consultancy product to a 6-figure owner, they're going to be like, why the hell are you sending me that? That's not relevant for me at all. And so what I'm able to do is only send that offer to the relevant person. And then the rest of my list could just get an offer of buying my book, or buying my community, the Creator Academy, or buying the Creator Accelerator cohorts. It depends where you are and what you're ready for and how you select what you want to learn about. And so I ask them the question, how do you like to learn? And by asking how you like to learn, they tell me online, in person, in cohorts, for accountability. They tell me what they want. And so in a year's time, I'm releasing my book. In a year's time, I want to be able to market my book to every single person on my newsletter. But in the meantime, I don't want to lose my whole newsletter by selling them the wrong product. And so this is called segmentation. It's called personalization. And if you want to learn how to market properly, that is what you need to learn. Because social media is effectively a tool to pull people off social media platforms like LinkedIn and Facebook and all the rest of it, and deplatform them onto your own list so that you own the relationship with them. And you're able to provide so much more value. I find it very interesting that when I look at a creator or a thought leader who has 100,000 followers and their posts only get a couple thousand likes, that means they're only able to reach a couple of percentage points of their audience, which in my mind is a bit crazy. Whereas throughout that building journey, throughout that audience building journey, if someone had set up a newsletter and you had those 100,000 people on your newsletter, every Sunday morning, I can send them an email, and I can send them the email that they want to receive based on what they answered. And so segmentation and personalization is absolutely critical to take people on a journey and give them the content and the products that they want. And I can tell you from personal experience, that is how you convert people for higher ticket products. And that is how you guide people from the beginning of their journey as, for example, a 6-figure entrepreneur through to now they've built their business from 6 figures to 7 to 8 figures and are still interested in the different products that I have to sell. And that is because there is a laddered approach. I'm serving them the content that they need when they need it. Now, before I go into the last section, which is how the new algorithm in 2025 actually works based on thousands of profiles and thousands of pieces of data that we have analyzed and put together to help other creators make better content. Before I do that, if you've liked this video, please like and subscribe and let me know in the comments what content you want me to produce next and how I can help you. So how does the algorithm work? What are the hacks that you need to know to give yourself the best chance at success? First, I want to talk about the fact that people say, screw the algorithm, or like, you shouldn't be making content for an algorithm, or, you shouldn't be hacking a platform and all the rest of it. I just take the view that I am making the best content that I possibly can for my business, but understanding the game is the most important thing. Like, why would I play the game and not know the rules? And so, if we're talking about LinkedIn, I can tell you strategically what the hacks are. I can tell you what types of content are more likely to do better than others, what types of designs are likely to do better than others. If we're talking about Instagram, I can tell you the same things, but for Instagram. They vary platform to platform. But if you were to start making content on Instagram and do it in the exact same way that you do it on LinkedIn, it's not going to work. And so the most important thing that I would say to you is the way that I've structured this video is so that you start with what's my ICP, how to create great content, understanding pre-validated content, how to make education content, how to convert people. This last part, this is the 1%. This is the stuff that's going to make your content much more aerodynamic moving forwards. So you can see in this report that we put together, and we're releasing another even more in-depth one soon, the type of post matters enormously. And so carousels and infographics and cheat sheets are working at almost 2 times better than any other style of post. And that's 2 times better in terms of impressions, but also 2 times better in terms of follower conversion. And so if you're making content that's not in those formats, that's totally fine. It's likely that it could do well, and sometimes it might do incredibly well. But the odds are that if you're making highly well-designed infographics or cheat sheets or carousels that convey the message, whatever the message may be, you are more likely to succeed than someone who isn't. And so when someone says to me, oh, ignore the platform, make content specifically for people, it's like, I am making the best content I possibly can for my audience, which typically is demonstrated by the fact that the content gets a lot of engagement. But the important thing is I'm making it in the format that works best for the platform at the time, but also works best for the person, because the platform is going to distribute the format that works best. And when people spend more time on content, it signals to the platform that that is good content. And so if you're making your content in really dense and really educational, really high value content, people have to spend time reading that content. And then from reading that content, they might actually comment and get engaged. And that is what pushes the algorithm. And so don't try and push water uphill. Don't listen to the naysayers. Like, make the best content you possibly can for your ICP, but don't make it in a format that's not going to work. Make it in the format that's going to give you the best chance at working. So as you can see from the diagram, the way content works right now is that carousels convert the best, then infographics and cheat sheets, then it moves into videos, then it moves into polls, then it moves into text and photos, and then text. So I'm not in any way saying that creators shouldn't make text and photo posts. But what I am saying is that as an entrepreneur watching this video, or as someone who wants to grow their profile, you might as well make infographics and carousels, because it's going to grow your account faster, generate you more leads faster, get you more email subscribers faster, get you more customers faster. And so I don't think it's inauthentic. I think it is absolutely tactically what you should do to grow your business. I wanted also to talk a little bit about comments and engagement, because this is, again, where you see a huge amount of engagement and a huge amount of push that goes on the platform. So AI obviously came about a few years ago, firstly with ChatGPT, but now with all these other tools that enable commenting and so forth. The key, ladies and gents, is that these platforms, social media platforms, LinkedIn specifically, do not like AI comments. And so I would advise people that in the science of commenting, you should be doing comments that are 10 words, no less, 10 words, because it signals that it's a real comment. It shouldn't be AI generated. It shouldn't come from an AI. It should be a legitimate comment on the post, about the post, because you're also trying to build a relationship. And so if, like me, you have a team that support you in running your social platforms, the most important thing is to ensure that your team have the skill set and the know-withal to comment and create content as you representing your personal brand. It is absolutely critical that that is the case. Don't just hook your account up to really bad automatic AI tools. One of the stats that is unequivocal is the fact that if you're engaging with 10 to 20 to 30 accounts a day on your profile, you are likely to see a 50% overall impression increase. And so again, as an entrepreneur looking at growing my profile, tactically, I know by being present and engaged on the platform, commenting on people's profiles, people commenting on mine, me responding, gets my account into a position where it is likely to see more impressions. Now, I don't know why I wouldn't do that. If that is the price it costs to get my profile to be more likely to be seen by my target audience, I will do that. And I would say that most big creators that I look at, I'd say almost all, are people who are quite present on the platform. They are engaged with their ICP. They're engaged with their audience. So if you want your post to do better and your profile to do better, then be engaged. Be engaged with your audience and with your ICP. So finally, I'll leave you with 3 key tips from the algorithm report, which are 3 tips on how to increase your post performance. Number 1, content that has strong idea or data visualization, as in infographics or ideas that are visualized. So for example, I could create a post about the 5 keys to scale. So the 5 keys to scale a brand. It might simply be that the visualization is 5 different keys. It could be 5 keys opening 5 different locks. Whatever it might be, you're just visualizing an idea so that someone can catch it in the feed, so they don't scroll past it. So you're effectively marketing your content, And so that is point one. Number two, posts that have 2-sentence hooks are performing the best right now. They're performing 20% better than any other hook. And so when you think about that, why are you not going to be writing your posts with 2-sentence hooks? It's not very hard to turn any type of hook into a 2-sentence hook. And again, for specificity's sake, the first line is 65 characters and the second line is 45 characters before it creates an ellipsis and see more. And so tactically, as an entrepreneur who wants to get my content seen, those are the types of hooks that I'm going to create right now. And finally, the third point, posts that are educational and posts that support people in going from A to B, from 1 to 2, from startup company to understanding how they make their first £100,000 a year or whatever it might be. Those are the posts that when they hit, and they don't hit every single time, but when an educational post lands with the audience and gets liked and commented on and reposted and so forth, those are the posts that drive 80% of the follower growth. And so really, truthfully, if you're going to create content in 2025 and moving forwards, create content that actually helps your ICP to achieve their objectives. So ladies and gentlemen, those are the 5 steps on how to build followers and land clients on LinkedIn and how to do it fast. As I said before, if you like the content, please give us a like and subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments what content you want me to create next.